no one spot checks it. To the guy who did and does with us right now, Mark Levin. Mark, you were spot checking the president, and you caught more than a few, what does the Washington Post use, Pinocchios?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to keep track when you give a Castro-like 50-minute speech and you're there taking notes. Let me tell you what I didn't hear them address. And by the way, Ronald Reagan did turn around the economy in 4 years, and not because he did it by himself, but because he embraced free market capitalism and undid what Jimmy Carter was doing to the private sector economy. So Clinton, like so often, is inaccurate. And here he's not even under oath, and he's still not telling the truth. Now,
oh, by the way, also on another matter, I immediately thought, I know you did as well, about presidents who had a lot on their lap was when they came into office. I don't know, Abraham Lincoln came to mind, but I digress. Go ahead.
Now, they got to build up Obama by pretending that the circumstances that he's dealt with are absolutely unprecedented. Here's America today. The governor is right. 23 million unemployed people, 15% comprehensive unemployment rate, 48 million people on food stamps, 1 in 6 people in poverty, disability insurance massively growing. By the way, nobody gave me this. I put this together myself. 25% of the GDP being devoured by the federal government. Over $5 trillion in additional debt in 4 years, and what do we have to show for it? $1.7 trillion a year in regulatory costs. The EPA is closing down mines and electricity plants and oil fields. We have a looming massive tax increase on January 1st. We have continuing home foreclosures. That hasn't been stopped. Median family income down by 5%. You know what we have here, Neil? We have a depression. Now, I know you guys in business and the economists will tell us this is a recovery. We've had 56 straight months since the recession has supposedly began, and no real recovery. And in this Democrat platform that I looked at, they're proposing another $675 billion on top of Obamacare and all the rest of it in more spending. Now, Bill Clinton's not running for president, thank God, because we've had enough of him. But you know, think about it, Mark. Why wouldn't there be? I mean, obviously, there were a lot of fact checkers with everything Paul Ryan said. If he sneezed, they want to make sure they got the part of the chew. But my point was, that's fair, that's right, but not nearly the same zeal. There was a very good piece of the Washington Post today that examined some of the more obvious ones. We tried to get into them last night on Fox Business. But, I mean, obviously the welfare claims, the report that it was all Republicans to blame for the budget negotiations. I was there through those ongoing days after days after days. There was certainly a lot of blame to go around, but to fault Republicans for torpedoing it, and I remember quite well the plan that was submitted by the president. It was at best a rebaked budget proposal, and it didn't cut anything. It was just a trim at the growth, and even then, barely. So why not the same zeal to go after President Clinton? Well, you know, Neil, not only that, Newt Gingrich should have gotten a standing ovation because as the speaker came in because healthcare was such a disaster, the American people rejected it. They turned the House over to the Republicans, and they're the ones that held Clinton's feet to the fire. And he never had a surplus, ever. He never had a balanced budget, ever. Because if you look at the media, not only are they mouthpieces for big government and mouthpieces for the welfare state, but many prominent members of the media are former Democrat staffers or former White House staffers. And this is a problem. And my attitude about this is the hell with the media. The facts need to get out. Reagan had to defeat the media as well as the left and the Democrats.
I'll tell you, but they're not. I always say, I don't care if you're left or right in this, red or green. You've got to be very big on basic facts. And when it came to discussing health care, perhaps the most omnibus piece of legislation and onerous, I think, in terms of just handling it, he got a couple of very basic stuff wrong. I'm thinking for people listening to the convention speech, if you had a problem with what Paul Ryan was saying and you're going to rip him apart, you better rip apart or at least start understanding what Bill Clinton said last night on health care. I want you to respond to this. Bill Clinton last night.
Listen to this. For the last 2 years, after going up at 3 times the rate of inflation for a decade, for the last 2 years, health care costs have been under 4% in both years for the first time in 50 years. So, let me ask you something. Are we better off because President Obama fought for health care reform You bet we are.
Now, by the way, real quickly, that immediately jumped out at me because we've had very low rates of increases so far because this little thing called a recession. But that aside, no one quibbled. No one even scratched their head and said, "Wait a minute,"
First of all, it's not true. 4% in over 50 years. That's number one. It's simply a flat-out lie. Number two.
By the way, it leaves out medical premium increases. Stunning as that is, it leaves it out. But go ahead.
Well, it leaves out policies, for instance, on college campuses, which are doubling and tripling as a result of HHS imposing regulations on what are very basic health care plans. I can tell you a little group that I run, our policy in the last 2 years, it's gone up 54%. So individuals are having difficulty finding private health care. Small group policies are getting harder and harder to find, and they're going through the roof. And college students are finding that their policies are doubling and tripling on college campuses as a result of this. So this is nonsense when these guys throw these figures out. But I want to make another point. To put this man up there like he's some kind of economic genius, when he is the godfather of the Community Reinvestment Act, subprime loans, derivatives, when his hacks were on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac making tens of millions of dollars, which helped cause an almost a financial collapse in this country, when his big fingerprints are all over this thing, is really quite funny, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that either.
Very good point. Mark Levin, thank you very much. The Community Reinvestment Act, to which Mark referred, of course, was something that spurred lending so that we would go from making this, hard to get a home to almost a birthright. That was then. Here we are now.